his sales training.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us for today's very special episode of Real Estate Disruptors. Today we have my good buddy Rhen Bartlett with Bartlett Holdings, and Rhen flew in from Mobile, Alabama, to talk about how he's hired over 250 sales reps to have been a part of 100 plus transactions per month. Now I'm on a mission to create 100 millionaires, and the information on this podcast alone is enough to help you become a millionaire in the next 5 to 7 years. If you'll take consistent action, you will become one. Now, we know you want to be a successful real estate investor. In order to do that, you need to be able to consistently buy houses at deep margins. You may not be contracting enough houses or buying them deep enough, causing you to potentially feel frustrated or anxious. So we know how deflating it can be walking out of the house without a signed contract. So we've helped hundreds of people buy thousands of houses at deep margins. DM me the word sales on Instagram to find out how, so you never have to worry about revenue again. And the show is brought to you by our sister company, InvestorLift. Get access to 2 million cash buyers across the country. Go to InvestorLift.com, put in Disruptors to get 10% off. And if you get value today, please tag a friend below, share this episode right now. That way we can all grow together. And this is a live show, so please ask your questions for Rhen to answer. You ready?
I'm ready, man.
All right. So first question is, what got you into real estate?
What got me into real estate? It's a great question. It was a long time ago. For me, about 5 years ago, I was running an advertising agency. And I called on an old business partner of mine, and we just hit it off. And he was like, man, have you ever thought about real estate? And I was like, absolutely not. Didn't own a house. Definitely didn't own any rentals. Never bought a house, rented, didn't know what equity was. But I knew how to close deals, and I knew how to market. And that was attractive. So we teamed up, never looked back since.
So talk to me about marketing, right? Because I think one of the most important parts of running a successful sales organization or real estate organization is marketing. So talk to me about your marketing background.
Yeah, so I tell people all the time, you don't run a real estate organization, you run a sales and marketing organization. Your product is real estate, right? And so running a successful marketing organization, you have to know your product, right? I think it consists of a few pieces when you're marketing. It's the product, the list, and then how you distribute it, right? Once you understand those concepts, it's not really that tough, right? We just met got to listen to Jeff Hoffman on stage at CG. What'd he tell us? He said, go out and get to know your people, understand their problem, create a way to solve it. Once you know how to solve it, then your messaging just has to be catered to that, so you can effectively communicate, hey, I can solve your problem.
Right.
And after that.
Before that, though, right, like you had your marketing agency. Like what prompted starting a marketing agency?
Well, I worked for one, right? So I'll tell you, when I was 25 years old, I was a server in a bar. And I got fired, and I was selling everything in my house to pay rent. And this guy, Chris Khalifi, who is a dear, dear, dear friend of mine, he called me and said, hey, I want to buy this mattress that you have. And so he pulls up, he gets out, he's driving a nice car, he's in a suit, he's on a phone. He walks in my house, looks at the mattress, kicks it, and walks out. And I'm like, hey, what do you do? And he's like, I own an advertising agency. And I said, I'm coming to work for you. And he smiles and says, no, you're not. Gets in his car and drives off. So I Googled what is an advertising agency, seen what it was, went and figured out really quick, hey, maybe I could build websites. And I just called him every day for about a week. And finally he said, you know what, just come in and talk to the guys, Rhen. I'm like, okay. So I go in, and they're sitting in a production room, and, they're young kids fresh out of college making car commercials. And built some great rapport with them. They liked me, and he was like, well, I'd love to hire you, but I don't have any money. I said, dude, I'll work for free. So I showed up, started, filling around, built him a website. He didn't have a website. He just did car commercials for local car dealerships, and just kept showing up, kept learning on YouTube how to build websites, how to do social media. And then I accidentally sold a website on accident and got a commission check, and then built it. And I said, wow, I'm in sales now.
Yeah.
And it just kind of exploded from there. We built his business up pretty big. And, it just kept evolving, and I kept learning and had a real thirst for knowledge, and I did not want to go back to bartending.
I think there's a lot there, right? As far as you were told no.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
And
you kept harassing the guy, following up with him.
Yeah.
Which is an important part of sales.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, when he said, I don't have money to pay you, he said, I'll work for free.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people, I think, that, may be listening to the show that may be above working for free. If you haven't done your first deal yet and don't want to pay for mentorship, but I don't want to work for free, I want to go
Right.
be scrappy. Like, what did you take from your experience?
I knew that I did not have the pedigree. I did not have a college degree. I did not have the background. I knew the only way I would get an opportunity to get into a professional organization was to work for free, right? And you're right. I think a lot of people do have a sense of entitlement. And by the way, I kept working there and then going and bartending at night until I made enough money. That's how I continued to pay my bills. But yeah, people think that they don't want to work for free, but I think that it's a misstep. I think that there's a lot to be gained from going in and working for free because you're much more driven then to begin to earn a paycheck. And I think you figure out what you like to do because if you're working for free, you tend to gravitate towards things that you actually like to do. So it doesn't feel like work. It's
Yeah.
then fun, if that makes sense.
Makes total sense. So, your partner reached out to you and said, hey, let's do real estate together.
Mm-hmm.
And you were like, absolutely not. But you did.
Yeah.
Was he doing real estate at that time?
He was, yeah. And I was working with a guy who I thought I was gonna become a partner with.
Mhm.
And it didn't end up working out. It was not in the cards. And I really wanted to own something. I really, Gary Vee was hot at the time. I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I would have went to work probably for a lot less than he paid me at the time, but just for the shot to earn equity and earn something. It was looking back, it was one of the best moves of my life.
So tell me about your first deal there.
First deal there, probably about a weekend. I didn't know much. I was completely overwhelmed, second guessing my whole life and the decision I had made, completely foreign space to me. And had an appointment, and then I was told to go out on it. And I went out on it. I knew what I could pay for it. And I stepped outside and made a phone call. I was like, dude, there's no way they're going to sell me this house for $40,000. And my ex-partner said, don't you freaking leave unless you got a contract in your hand. Go offer them 40 grand. And so I did. And after about 3.5 hours of, putting that Southern charm on them, they agreed to it. And I
Yeah.
walked out like clammy and shaking. And from then on, I was like, oh my God, I'm addicted to this. This is awesome.
What was do you remember what the value was?
Ooh, the value then was probably $150, $160 ARV.
Okay. And you had to offer 140. So this is your
40.
40, sorry.
40.
40. Your very first time.
Mm-hmm.
What was your thought process? Because you were saying like that there's no way they're going to do it. So
Yeah.
talk me through that.
Sure. So I had no sales process, right?
Mhm.
It was just, hey, go make it happen, just kind of cowboy gunslinging. My thought process was, I just don't know why they take this offer, right? I didn't understand wholesaling really. I didn't understand the value exchange, the convenience. I really, at that time, didn't understand why people would actually sell their house to a wholesaler. I really do now. I
Mhm.
understand on a very fundamental level. But it was a challenge, right? I looked at it as a challenge, and also like kind of earning my stripes. Hey, if I'm going to be what I'm supposed to be, this is a mountain that I'm going to have to climb. I'm going to
Yeah.
have to do this. And I just sat in there and I listened to the people and told them what I wanted to offer and why I thought it was a good deal and why they should do business with me.
Yeah.
I told them that it was my first deal, that I worked for an established company, that I really needed to get it. And, they had inherited the house and it was junked out. It was brick on a slab, and it ended up, I know the flipper that bought it, and I went and looked at the final product because I was super curious.
Mhm.
He did a phenomenal job. But man, just thinking, I'm kind of excited thinking about it now. It's kind of like your first kiss, I guess.
Yeah.
Your first wholesale deal.
What lessons did you learn in that transaction?
In that transaction, I think resiliency, not to give up, right? Just to stay in there and fight for what you want, but also just to be nice for people and have some empathy, right? They were going through a situation where they had this house, they had no money. It was um, emotionally a very tough situation because they had inherited it. And, so I just learned to listen and to have empathy and to tell the truth, right? I told them what I was going to do. I told them we were going to wholesale it. I told him I knew exactly who I thought was going to buy it. And I had went out and watched a bunch of YouTube videos where people were wholesaling deals, but always telling them that they were going to buy it, right? It's a
Mhm.
little bit of manipulation there. It's not 100% true. You could say, oh, well, we're going to double close it, so technically we buy it. But I learned that, be resilient, have empathy, tell the truth.
Got it. So that was your first deal. I mean, were all your other deals easier at the appointment after that?
No, absolutely not. In fact, it became a little tougher because I tend to get a bit of an ego sometimes. I have to stay humble and check myself. And I thought I was hot shit. And yeah, I fell on my face a lot after
Right.
that. But from that, I realized that, hey, I need a sales process.
Mhm.
I need a systematic way to ensure that I'm taking the right actions and the right steps, saying the right thing to the right person at the right time with the right offer. And that's kind of when I become super obsessed with sales.
Yeah. Got it. So, how long ago was it? You said you started this 4 years ago?
About 4.5. It would have been 5 years. It would be 5 years in January.
Okay. So, we're as part of a growing organization, like what were some of the early challenges you faced in that wholesaling business?
Definitely leadership,
Mhm.
right? I didn't have a ton of leadership experience. I was a big knucklehead, and I made a lot of leadership mistakes.
What are some of those leadership mistakes?
Which one didn't I make? I mean, just trying to be a dictator, hollering at people, belittling people. I had such a burning desire to win that it was me putting myself first and my needs first and my ego first and not taking into account that, hey, these people that work for me that I'm privileged enough to have on my team, although I didn't look at it that way then, it was their privilege to be on my team, right? Um,
Well, that's the first step of leadership.
yeah. Um, that they were there to serve the company instead of the company being there to serve them,
Mhm.
you know? And once that paradigm shift,
Can you remember the first one where you're like going back to like the first time you completely blew it in a leadership situation?
I really can't pinpoint it, man.
All
There's
right, then what about the biggest one?
the biggest one. Hmm. I don't know. Let's circle back to that. Something will come to me. Nothing
Sure.
nothing big comes up off the top of my head. Uh, but something will come to me here in a minute.
But there had to be also like a situation, because it's 4 or 5 years, we make a lot of mistakes.
There was a light bulb moment,
Yeah.
right?
What was the light bulb
We were
moment?
sitting in a quarterly, and we had hit a ceiling at the time, and just trying to figure it out, and couldn't understand why we weren't hitting our goals. And Gary Harper was actually there running. If you know Gary
Mhm.
Sharper, he said, "You guys don't have a talent problem; you have a leadership problem," and that really hit home, right?
Because
Because
now the focus, the crosshairs
mhm,
are on you guys.
yeah. And it really made me reflect because I wanted to do everything. I wanted to be successful. I was challenged, but I was just not. I found success early on by doing everything myself. But as our team grew, I continued to try to hold everything and I continued to try to do everything. And I continued to be a diminisher, accidentally, of course.
Mhm.
Um, but once I understood what he was trying to say, because when he first said it, I was like, that's not the problem. I'm a great leader, best leader there is. But it sank in, and I couldn't find a reason why that was not the truth, if that makes sense.
Mhm. When was this approximately?
Probably 2018, 2019.
So you have Gary Harper coming to your office
Mm-hmm.
and you're complaining that you were not hitting numbers or not hitting the goals, the metrics.
Yeah.
And you're more or less, I'm just guessing here, like our people are inadequate. They're not doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And he looks at you as like, that's not the problem.
That's not the problem. You're the problem.
And you have to reflect on that. Let that sit. Let me simmer
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah.
How long did it take for you to like realize like, wait, what he's saying is correct?
It was probably pretty quick,
Okay.
right?
Because that's something that could easily feel, you can easily become defensive.
Yeah. And I probably was for a moment,
Mhm.
right? But there was one particular young lady on my team that I really trusted, and I asked her, I was like, he's wrong, right? And she's like, No, he's not wrong, right? And then I think I was open, and then I um, began to look inward, and I
Mhm.
and I said, "Hey, listen, I really trust her. I trust Gary. I don't think they would steer me wrong,
Yeah.
right?" And then I just got to it, and I do what I do every time I find a deficiency or a skill set that I'm missing is I just start to read, 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 read. Read a bunch of John Maxwell books, a bunch of Multipliers is one of the most impactful leadership books that I've ever read, by
Liz Wiseman.
Liz Wiseman. Yeah. And then we jumped in and did some training with Larry Yach and
Mhm.
Annie. And then I really got confused because what I thought leadership was is not how they define it.
No, it's very different. So,
Very different.
I mean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think a lot of us, when we start leadership, we kind of have like, I'm going to tell you what to do,
Yeah.
and then you execute it,
Yep.
right? That's that 20th century industrial
Mm-hmm.
complex, military complex leadership style, which worked in the 20th century, more or less. They might not have been high morale, but it worked.
Sure. Got the job done.
Right? So you're talking about like maybe you watched the movie 300, you're inspired, right,
Mm-hmm.
by how they got things done. You face adversity together and so on.
Yeah.
But that took you only so far. And one of the things I've learned from Jason Medley and Larry Yach is like, what got you here won't get you there.
That's right. Very true.
Right? So you got that. You had this humbling moment,
Mm-hmm.
and then you signed up for Larry Yach with SEAL Team Leaders.
Yeah. And to give
That
credit,
was the first thing you did? Or you said we read John Maxwell
I read a
books?
bunch of books. Went and read a bunch because it took a little time before Larry could get to us. But and it wasn't just me, right? It wasn't just me that had the epiphany moment. We had an executive leadership team, and it was a collective moment where we all seen we fell short in
Mhm.
that area, right? And then we all rallied together and supported each other and said, "Hey, this is a deficit that we have as a company, and we're committed to improving it." Right. And I think that's what that specific team in that season in our business, that's what made them great,
Yeah.
made us great.
So John Maxwell, I think, is more or less, I look at kind of like the godfather of leadership, right? Like
Mhm.
he's written so many leadership books.
Yeah.
My
Dozens.
favorite of which is Good Leaders Ask Great Questions.
Yeah.
So you go through this journey. So you read the books. You read Liz Wiseman's Multipliers, which is another amazing
Amazing.
book. Um, when did you start seeing yourself evolve or see things change as a leader?
As we were going through Larry's training, I think, we signed up for Larry's training because it was SEAL team leaders,
Same thing as the same reason.
right?
It's like,
I
how cool to
like,
have a badass SEAL
yeah.
to coach me, right?
I like to see myself kind of as a warrior, a Spartan. Like I'm very intense. I'm very focused. I like to go to war every day. I get up and I put my helmet and I grab my shield and get after it. And I was just like, what a perfect fit. This is going to be great. Like
Mhm.
he's going to teach me how to be an assassin. And oh my word, was it the complete opposite,
It is.
right? And it super confused me. Super confused me. But the very first lesson is where he begins to talk about language. And I began to realize that I had very bad language. Not bad as in I ran around cussing all the time, which I probably did, but it was not a language that built people up,
Mhm.
right? It wasn't a language that by natural distinction raised all the ships, if that makes sense, right?
Makes total sense.
Yeah. And so we immediately changed our language, and language is so dynamic, right? And he talks about this. He talks about this in his new book, how leadership actually works. But, I could say, hey, go grab a phone. And depending on who you are, you could grab two different things,
Right.
you know? Actually, you could grab multiple things because you could grab your computer, you could grab
Right.
a cell phone, or
I
you
can
could
call
go
from Salesforce on my laptop.
yeah, you could go grab it. So, it's so dynamic and he goes on to teach about distinctions and having distinctions in your language. So we started to recognize that, and we started to understand that you can be a leader, a follower, or a manager
Mm-hmm.
and still be a CEO or COO or a director. And that was inspiring to me and humbling and eye-opening and all the other things that come along with that. But I think that it was a huge paradigm shift for our entire team. We all started kind of treating each other different, speaking to each other different, and it opened up a whole can of worms with NLP for me, and just really being hyper focused on language and positivity, and it was a really pivotal moment in
Yeah.
my professional career.
One of the things you talked about, leader, follower, manager, for me, like, it's actually a relief
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like I have to be a leader all the time.
Yeah.
That's how I felt.
Yep.
But reality is, depending on the situation, I can be a leader, I can be a manager, or a follower.
Yep.
I just need to make sure that everyone around me is clear and I'm communicating to them which hat I'm wearing.
Yeah.
I'm a leader, follower, or manager.
Yeah, there was another principle too, and I don't remember where I picked it up. Maybe you'll recognize it, know where I got it. But somebody that I really respect, or a book that I really thought highly of, it says you don't have to be right all the time, and the best thing to do is to tell, as the leader of the organization, and is to admit and be vulnerable to your team,
Mm-hmm.
that hey, I mess up a lot. In fact, I'm probably the biggest knucklehead in the organization,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's okay. I'll ask you for grace when I mess up, and I promise I'll give it back when you
Right.
mess up. And I think that was a big stress, or a big lever that relieved a lot of pressure, because I felt like I always had to be right. I felt like I always had to have the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those accidental diminisher moments. You don't. And actually, great leaders, they put it back on their people to help
Right.
come up with creative solutions. It's often the frontline workers are the ones that have the most creative and unique and innovative ideas, because they're in the grind every day. I
In the
like to say
trenches.
the magic's in the mud, right? Go play in the mud.
Must be a southern saying.
No, it's just something I made up. But
Okay, so then, so you started diving deep into leadership and getting better at it. When did you see a shift throughout the organization from the I guess A, when you see the culture change, and B, when you see the results change?
yeah, so the culture began to change as our language changed, and we began to really lean into our core values. And we also got really big on accountability. I think we were sitting in an L10 at one point in time, completely avoiding all of the problems because it was uncomfortable to discuss.
Yeah.
And somebody just said, we're not talking about any real issues here. And I had been thinking it for the past 3 or 4 weeks. Like, these L10s are a waste of time. And in fact, if you ever think your L10s are a waste of time, you're avoiding the issues.
Yeah, it probably is because you're not using it.
Yeah, it is a waste of time. And that was huge. And there was a couple team members on the team at that time that probably weren't a great fit, right? And would have been offended or felt challenged for bringing up issues. And so we made some shifts there, and we started holding each other accountable. And there were some conversations had that, hey, we got to step it up. Like, we have so much potential, so many great people, so many talented people, but we're doing ourselves a disjustice by not talking about the hard stuff, by not
Right.
addressing the elephant in the room, by not using all of this wonderful information that is at our fingertips. And I said, we're actually being lazy, guys. We're taking the easy way out, which is making our lives and our business exponentially more tough.
Right. You got to rip off the Band-Aid at
Yeah.
some point.
Exactly.
So the other thing too is, we're talking about you've hired over 250 sales reps.
That's a guess, but maybe even a conservative guess.
So I imagine that was pretty easy.
No,
No.
I'm not Phil Green. It's not pretty easy to hire. They got it down to a science.
So you've hired over 250. You've kept over 50
Mm-hmm.
along the way. So, what were some of the biggest challenges when you first started hiring salespeople?
The management portion of it, right? It's like anything else. People, they're all greatly different.
Mm-hmm.
They all have different personalities. They all have different strengths and weaknesses, and it's tough to understand. You kind of want to put it into a box and manage everyone the same way, which again is taking the easy path, right?
Mhm.
That would be avoiding the tough work. But so that was, the onboarding was tough. The training, the sales training was tough. And then the continued management and getting them to perform and keeping them bought in to what we were trying to do. Because it's very easy to sell somebody on coming to work for you,
Yeah.
right? It becomes increasingly difficult at scale to keep them sold on the vision when you as a leader aren't always walking the walk that you portrayed in the beginning.
Which is really easy to do if you're selling it hard.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about, the first few hires. What were some of the things you learned with your first few hires?
Well, I don't know about things I learned with the first few, but eventually I learned that I have to stop selling this job.
All right.
You
So
know,
can you elaborate like what selling this job means?
well, yeah, I mean, I would say things like, "Hey, you can come here and make $250,000, $300,000 a year. I'm going to teach you everything I know about real estate. You're going to have 20 qualified appointments on your calendar, and all you got to do is go get them to sign a contract." Just things like that,
Mhm.
right? And then what you're doing then is setting false expectations, because we all know that a third of that may be half true, right?
Mhm.
You're going to get some qualified
A third of it is
appointments.
half true.
A third of that's half true. Uh, could you make $250,000? Of course.
Mhm.
Will you make $250,000? Well, maybe 5% of your staff will,
Mhm.
from an acquisitions or a dispositions stance. And so we just kind of shifted and started saying, hey, we got a great culture and we help a ton of people. This is how we help them, but this job is freaking hard. I'm hard to work for. I have a high standard of excellence. It'll be very rewarding and very challenging, and you're going to learn a skill set, but you're not going to get qualified appointments. You're going to have to fight for them. You're going to have to dig for them. Just essentially everything that we were selling, we tried to, and
Undo it.
undo it.
Went the opposite direction.
And of course, not all of that was true, but once they got in, we price anchored them.
Mhm.
Is essentially what we did.
Yeah.
And so once they got in, they're like, oh, well, this isn't as bad as he said. And then the expectations weren't this pie in the sky, almost undeliverable.
So we went from over promising and under-delivering
Mm-hmm.
to under promising and over delivering.
And over deliver.
So a much better experience for yourself.
Much better experience.
So then that's the sourcing side.
Mm-hmm.
What about, I think one of the biggest challenges people have is like I meet Rhen, at an event. And I say, you know what? This guy, I think he's got some talent. I'm going to recruit him to work for me as my acquisition guy.
Right.
And then lo and behold, 9 months later, after I teach Rhen everything I know, Rhen's competing against me in my market.
Oh, yeah. It happens.
So talk to me about what you guys have done to effectively make that less desirable for them to go do.
Well, one thing we did is we asked better questions in the interview process, and we tried to understand, are we hiring an entrepreneur or are we hiring an employee?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because there's a difference. You may have an employee with entrepreneurial tendencies, but an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur, right? They're gonna see it, they're gonna innovate it, and they're gonna try to go do it. And we want to understand if that's the case, because I think everybody should have the right, if they want, to go start their own business.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I've shifted my mindset through some previous experiences recently that I'll help you do it. I want you to go do it. And I want you to tell me, and let's get an exit strategy together and then go, right? But we want to create an environment where they don't want to leave,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where we understand their why. We understand why are they there to make a paycheck? Because that paycheck's only the vehicle to help them accomplish their goals and their dreams. And if I can do that within the company where they don't have to leave, I'll have better retention, I'll have better tenure, and I'll have a better culture,
Yeah.
right? Because if they're leaving to go do their own thing, they're seeking something that you're not giving them there at your company,
Right.
which could be a bazillion different things, right?
Mhm.
It could be anything. And so just asking better questions on the front end, and once they're there, understanding what they need and continuing to challenge them. Great people want to be challenged. A players want to be held accountable. Um, and they want to continue to receive nourishment, if you will. You have to keep nourishing their soul.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
It makes
feel like I
sense.
took
So
the long way around there.
what are 2 or 3 things that you guys have done intentionally to make sure you're retaining top talent?
Um, so I think I learned a great lesson. I have a buddy of mine that owns a Chick-fil-A, and everyone's experienced Chick-fil-A, and you know that they're probably the only one of very few fast food chains that do it right. You go there, you have a great experience. And so I really try to suck as much information out of that guy that he would give me, which was very little. Um, but the one thing that I did get is in the back of their restaurant, they have a career path from how you can go from a cashier all the way up to a proprietor, to an owner of a particular location. And so I think that people want to know, what is their path forward. They want to feel like, if I choose to put in the work, can I progress and better my career and myself and my position in life? And that was one thing, right? We gave a path. Probably wasn't as well defined as we would have liked it to be, but they knew, because there was also, and we told the stories of other employees that had risen up, through the ranks and started, one gal specifically, she was making 30K and she's up making over 200, leading a whole division, started as a lead manager, become a higher up executive. So, giving them that path forward, continuing to challenge them in the right ways, and showing them that if you do the right things, here's the reward, and this is how you continue to sow the seeds of success, not only in your own life but in others.
Right.
And so we were big on sharing and building that team and building that camaraderie, and then giving them an identity. Right? I think that many companies are blind to the fact that well, let's start here, right? I had this paradigm shift one time sitting in church. I was trying to hire a videographer. We needed some content, and I could not find one, and if I did find one, they wouldn't show up for an interview. And I was like, man, I must not be offering enough money. So we jacked that up to $75,000 for a guy to come in and shoot content. Still nothing, right? And so I'm sitting in church one day and I'm looking around, and I go to a pretty big church in Alabama. There's one on every corner. But because video production's on my mind, I really start to notice how great the video production in our church is.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking, I'm like, these are the greatest musicians around. This is the greatest production quality. Oh my God, there's 15 camera dudes running around with Converse and hipster clothes on. And I'm like, they're probably here for free.
Yeah.
What are they doing right that I'm doing wrong? And then I was like, well, God.
Yeah.
They're here for God, of course. And I said, well, I'm not that. But then I asked another question. Well, what is God?
Mm-hmm.
And you could say it's a higher power creating the being or whatever, but what is that? And if you break it down to the micro, and what is the church? It's a community, it's connection, it's love, and it's a place where people come together to make the world a better place. And I said, that's it. If I can offer those things, community, connection, identity, and betterment of society, maybe these guys will come work for me for free too.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was big. That was huge. And we changed we rewrote our core values at that time. We changed kind of our mission statements and things like that. And we started to attract those type of people.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, he has a few more resources than you, right?
Yes, he has.
A few more recruiters.
A few more recruiters than me.
Yeah.
But if you break it down, it's that simple, man. People want connection.
Right. They want to resonate. They want purpose.
They want purpose.
Common purpose.
Mm-hmm.
We had someone that used to work here, and someone said, okay, it's what's his qualification? Oh, he works at the church.
Yeah.
It's and the last time I'd been at church was 1999. I was like, so he knows how to plug a microphone into a speaker. Who cares?
Yeah.
But we hired him on, and he was good. He was a great audio engineer. And then I went to a baptism. I don't know, it was earlier this year or late last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, whoa, this this is a concert.
Yeah,
This is not a
they have great talent in
they have great
churches,
talent.
and most of them are there working for free in service of their higher power or for very minimum wages.
Yeah. So that was for we're talking about retention and management. So there's some overlap,
Mhm.
right? The other thing too is you gave a great presentation at Collective Genius. I want to say 6-9 months ago, maybe a year ago,
Mhm.
right? And it talked about the importance of culture, and part of that was like making a great first impression. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So we've all started a job before and shown up, and you had that first awkward day, right? Where you walk into an office, you don't know anybody. Everybody's looking around at you. They don't really know why you're there. You don't
Yeah.
have the company logo on your chest yet. And you walk up and ask, "Hey, where's John? He's not here yet." And John was the person that you were told to meet up with. And you're
Mhm.
like, "Well, heck, what do I do?" It's really awkward, right? And so that's the employee or the candidate's first impression of that company, whether they mentally or consciously think to themselves, "Oh, this place sucks," but subconsciously it's rooted in their impression, in their memory that this wasn't maybe what it was sold to me to be,
Mhm.
right? And I just had this idea one day. I'm like, what if their first day is like a ballet? It's strung together and it's just seamless and it's perfect. And how can we really make that person, that candidate, that employee feel like just wow, just blown away? Kind of like that Chick-fil-A experience,
Yeah.
like, hey, they're out at your window taking the order. And so, we put in some things that I call pretty sneaky ninja tricks in the interview process, asking just particular questions, things that they wouldn't think anything of. Like, hey, by the way, what's your favorite coffee? I was grabbing Starbucks this morning. They had a new coffee out, right? And the final product ended up being, you know, them being met down either at their car or at the elevator with their favorite cup of coffee and being escorted upstairs to find a shirt in their size and their favorite candy bar with a notebook with their favorite quote on the inside. And it just creates such a different experience,
Yeah.
employee experience, right? And what do you think happened when they got home on that first day? What do you think they did on their
It
drive
became a
home?
company ambassador.
Exactly. They called someone
Mhm.
and they said, "Oh my Lord, you're not going to believe my first day at this place." And that piques so and so's interest. And then they start researching, thinking, "Hey, is this a place I want to go work?"
Yeah.
And so we're doing that to attract top talent because top talent wants to be wine and dined,
Mhm.
right? They know they're good. It's like the hot chick in the bar. She knows she's hot. You better buy her a beer. You're not going to walk up to the hot chick and say, "Hey, buy me a drink." Don't work that way.
I don't know. I think we can make that work. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I remember my very first day a couple times, right, at a company, and like, okay, you show up at 8:30 or 8 a.m., right?
Mhm.
Because you think that's the right. You don't know it's your first day. You don't know the time you're supposed to show up,
Yeah.
and you get there. You're there before everybody else, and you wait for your boss to show up. And I think I was like showing up at 8:30 on my very first day of work. My boss doesn't roll in until like 11:30, or not roll in, but like doesn't meet with me.
Yeah.
It's like you're just kind of twiddling your thumbs, like
And sit there. It's awkward.
sit there. You don't have your laptop. You don't have nothing. You're just kind of
Yep.
sitting there.
Yeah. And the cool thing about my experience in all of this is like, and I've heard you say this before, none of these ideas are original or proprietary,
Hmm.
right? Everything that I've just described, there's been instances in life that have kind of smacked me in the face and reminded me, but like that whole first day dance come from Sales Boss,
Yeah.
right? He outlines everything to create that brand ambassador in his book, which has been consumed by millions and millions of people. He actually came to our office. He said, "I heard about you guys,
Hmm.
and I heard how well you've implemented the practices in this book, and I just got to see it." And I can't remember what's the author's name of the sales book. He came
Jonathan Wisman, I think.
Wisman, yeah. He
Yeah.
came to our offices because he wanted to see it in real life.
That's
Because
awesome.
I took my team and I said, "Hey, everything in this book, step by step, we have to do it."
Hmm.
And we did it, and it's still talked about. Like, people still come up and they say, "Man, I just can't believe, like, just the smallest little weird things that people really remember." The quote being in the notebook that you bought me. I had forgot my pen on the first day because I was nervous, but you had me a pen with the color ink that I preferred. Like, that was so neat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like one trick that I always did was I got the recruiters to add the person's start date with their name. And so when I passed them in the hall, I could say, "Hey, Steve, I'm so glad you're here."
Mm-hmm.
And that I got more feedback that blew people away, that already the COO, the CEO, whatever my role was at that time, knew their name. And when I
Yeah.
passed them in the hallway, I addressed them by name. And it's those little moments, those little micro moments in time that set the stage for those brand ambassadors.
You know, it's interesting talking about, like, we know, right? But we don't, there's not a lot of original ideas. We got to listen to Jeff Hoffman yesterday
Mhm.
speak on the main stage. And he talked about, like, visiting your customers and this and that. And as I'm listening to him, I was like, this guy sounds exactly like Sam Walton. You know, the
Mhm.
guy that created one of the biggest empires, right? Walmart and Sam's Club was all done by Sam Walton. Right?
Yeah.
Like, if you take all his 4 kids or whatever and combine their wealth, they're like top 5.
Yeah.
And he built that by flying around the country and talking to customers,
Yeah.
right? So I'm listening to Jeff talk about this, like, he just did exactly what Sam Walton did. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
And then, like, a couple slides later, shows a picture of Sam Walton's like, okay. And I actually asked him about that in the hallway. He's like, yeah, I've heard that story. I heard that story a long time ago. And guess what? It's not a new idea,
Mhm.
but how many people have done it? And he built Priceline
Yeah.
with that.
I find it pretty interesting, and all of the successful titans of industry, they leave clues.
Yeah.
They leave clues. The times may be different, but the principles remain the same, right? You told me something earlier. What was the quote you gave me earlier? That
Oh, Jason Lewis?
yeah.
Yeah. The quote, my quote for the event for the last 3 days was that you don't need to learn anymore. If you can just close the gap between what you know and what you do,
Mhm.
there's a lot of money in there.
Yeah. And it's so true, right? We know all the things. I mean, how many books have you read?
I don't know, a couple
A
hundred.
lot.
Yeah.
What if you just went, if you never read another book and went back and implemented everything that you had learned in these books,
Mhm.
you would find more success
I would
than
be selling hundreds and thousands of millions of books
That's right.
if I could just execute everything I learned
That's right.
from those
I had
existing books.
I used to read for sport, right? Every year I would post a list of how many books I read, and it was a lot. And I had a mentor, Howard Shore's actually his name. He's a scaling up coach, and he said, "Stop it!" Right? There's a funny Saturday Night Live
Mhm.
skit. Stop it. Um, and I said, "What do you mean? What do you mean? It's my superpowers reading all these books." He was like, "Man, how many books have you read? How many books are in your Audible right now?" I'm like 800. He's like, "Open one up. The most recent one you've read." And I said, "Okay." And I went, and I think it was Sales Acceleration Formula. I remember it very specifically. And he said, "You're done with the book?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "All right, give me 4 principles from that book that you've implemented in your business."
Called you out right there.
Called me out. And I said, "Well, Howard, I don't think I've implemented anything." And he said, "Well, why read it? So you can hang it up on your bookshelf and so it looks cool, you know?"
Mhm.
And so it was pretty interesting taking that and thinking and sitting on it, right? Because these books, they're so great, but nobody actually implements the things that they tell them to do,
Yeah.
right? And so what he said he does is he goes, I read like 2 books a quarter, and I don't move on to the next book till I've extracted some principles and I've implemented them into my business.
Yeah.
And so it slowed my reading down tremendously. I don't feel like I need to read for sport anymore. But that's the thing, and that's why we got really good with what we did is we would just execute on a level that others would only talk about.
But there's so much of the keeping up with the Joneses, right? Like, read this
Yeah.
book, read that book. Have you read this book? And
Yep.
it's
Yep.
it's tough. So another thing we talked about was, being able to do triple digit transactions. Now, I'm not even doing triple digits a year, right?
Mhm.
I'm one of the smaller folks within Collective Genius.
Right.
To do 100 plus transactions in a month, it sounds almost ludicrous. Probably broke a few things.
Broke everything.
Yeah. So let's talk about, like, what were some of the 3, 4, maybe 5 key things that helped you to do that?
Having the right people in the right seat is the number one, backed by the right culture and the right purpose, right? Um, you'll find that when people have an aligned purpose, they'll work and tolerate exponentially more than if there is no purpose at all. You know, And if you can attract people to that purpose and you all have a common goal and you believe in what you're doing, it becomes a lot more fun to do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so that's the first thing, is getting the right people on your organization and making sure that they're bought into what you're doing. Making sure you're doing something good, right? If your people, and look, wholesaling can be looked at many different ways,
Yeah.
right? I'm a big believer that it really serves a purpose and it really helps people. But I've had people in my organization before, heard them say it, y'all are stealing houses. I know that's not true. We're trading equity for solutions,
Right.
right? And we're not putting a gun to anyone's head to sign a contract. But I've also had people in my organization that say we changed lives.
Mm-hmm.
We gave this old lady who had nothing to eat, that was falling through her floor, a safe place to stay and food for 3 months, right? And that's the difference in doing and in hitting a ceiling and spinning out and just going to the moon.
Right. So, right people in the right seats.
Chasing the right mission,
Chasing
a
the right mission.
common, believed upon mission.
And that one is really deep to unravel, but we'll just say that's one point.
Yeah. Second thing is, you're a sales and marketing organization. You got to have salespeople.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many folks and they say, I want to do big numbers, but I don't want to manage salespeople. They're a nightmare. And believe me, they can be when you take the wrong approach.
I've said that before.
Yeah.
More than once.
It's tough. People are hard to manage,
Mm-hmm.
especially salespeople.
Yeah. I was talking to someone the other day. They're like, why don't you go do this? It's like, because it requires hiring more humans.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
there's hiring people and there's hiring salespeople. It's
Mhm.
like, I don't know. It's like, I can't think of a good example, but it's like, it's another level of difficulty. This is like,
Sure.
right? Like you're hiring like administrative people. You're hard. You're at hard difficulty, right? Like
Yeah.
implementing systems,
It's expert level.
right? Yeah, like there's medium,
Expert hard.
right? Well, I'll say hiring people is hard,
Mhm.
and hiring salespeople, yeah, you gotta be expert, because not only are you managing the people, but you're managing people that are going through lots of emotions,
Yes.
because the cycle of a transaction can
Go up and down.
be a roller coaster.
Yeah. So I'm a big believer in building a very large sales force,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because just as you just said, it's up and it's down, but you find a consistent revenue model, and it's only stabilized when you have X number of salespeople per your quota goals, which is typically about 150%. So if I want to hit, say, 100 transactions a month, I need enough salespeople by their KPIs on average to do 150. And then you kind of find a consistent, sustainable revenue model. And then you also have to account for the churn. Your bottom 30% are going to churn. You know, I have a rule of thirds. 33% of your people are crushing it and happy, and they're attracting other people to the team. The other 33% are neutral. Maybe they're winning, maybe they're losing. You ask them on any given day how they feel about working for Rhen, and you know. The bottom half, they're looking for another job. You ask them about their job, I hate it. They don't give you leads. The training's awful. Rhen's awful. His breath stinks. He's ugly. You know,
The leads suck.
yeah, the leads suck. The opportunities suck. The lead managers suck. The management sucks. And so you just have to understand that. And it's any organization,
Mhm.
right? There's a couple great books out there, Who Moved My Cheese and Our Iceberg is Melting, all talking change management. And both of those books bring back to the rule of third principle. You know, you're going to have your hims and you're going to have your haws. But
Yeah.
you just have to understand it and account for it and hire up, staff up.
So salespeople. So we're talking about sales and marketing, but we're
Mhm.
talking about salespeople there.
Well, sales, and then you gotta provide opportunities for your salespeople, and they have to be able to capture those opportunities and turn it into revenue,
Yeah.
right? And so if we added two more, it would be a good training program, good management program, and you got to produce the opportunities.
Got it. We're going to talk about the managing program in just a second. So before we get into questions, I want to talk about also the whole person perspective, because I've heard you talk about it, and it's a very interesting
Mm-hmm.
point when we're talking about, management. What is the whole person perspective?
Yeah, so the whole person perspective is kind of an ideology that I've strung together in dealing with people in general, right? This isn't just towards managing salespeople, but managing anyone or being a part of anyone's life, right? The person that shows up to work every day, that's 25% of who they are,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're only at work probably about 25% of their time. if that. The other 75% is how they show up to work, to be your employee, to wear that logo on your chest, right? And everybody has stuff going on in life, right? Maybe they're fighting with their kids, maybe they're fighting with their wife, maybe they don't have any maybe they're having financial issues, right? And you have to know the person. And kind of where this come from is one day we're sitting in a meeting, and I'm with all the people that I directly report to me, and we're having a sales rep problem, right? There's always a sales rep problem. But I'm listening and I'm listening, and they bring up one rep specifically. And it was said, I don't know what's wrong with this guy. He's just not performing, and he used to be a top performer. And I said, it's funny you say his name because he called me yesterday, right? And I'm pretty well removed from running the sales team at this time. And I said, did you know that he's having a problem at home? And you guys have just shifted the pay plan, and he's freaking out. And there's some things going on. Did you know that? And they said, well, no, I didn't know that. And should I know that? You can't know all the people that report to you that way. And I said, really? They said, yeah, it's impossible. And I went around the room. There was 8 of them in the room. And I told them exactly how much money was in each one of their bank accounts within $10,000, and how much they thought, whether they thought they made enough. And their jaws drop, right? Because and they said, how the hell did you know that? I said, well, I listened to you. When you talk, I'm listening, and I'm collecting data so I can be a better servant to you, right? And we went through and we done some research from that, but we really tried to understand our people, and we strung that together. And I'm like, man, you're a servant to the people who work under you. And part of the way that, and they respect you and admire you as a leader and as a mentor, they probably wouldn't work for you. And so it's your job as a leader to serve them in whatever capacity they need served in the season that they are in right now.
Yeah.
Whether they're having financial hardships or whether they just got a $30,000 paycheck, right? I'll give you an example of both. Right? I just gave you an example of the dude having the hardship, but I seen a rep one time get like a $35,000 paycheck, big paycheck. And I called him, and I just knew the first year I made real money, I had a big tax bill coming, right? Well, I didn't know it until I got it. And I told him, I said, hey.
Surprise for every 1099 person.
Yeah. I said, hey, man, congratulations. What are you going to do with your money? And he had it all spent already. And I said, well, you got to pay taxes on that money. What? I got to pay. How much? Well, I don't know on your particular situation, but this is about what I pay. And he's like, whoa, no. I'm like, man, you probably do some research, talk to an accountant, something like that. And he called me at the end of the year and he said, dude, thank you so much. Like, if you wouldn't have called me that day, I would be in real hot water right now. But I did what you said, and I talked to an accountant, and I started putting a percentage of every paycheck up. And it really just went back and solidified that you got to be there when your people are winning, and you got to be there when you're losing. But unless you're listening and paying attention and being a servant leader, you're going to miss those opportunities.
Yeah.
Right?
It's really powerful.
So closing that loop on the whole person perspective, it's like paying attention and being there for the whole person, not just the employee. And if you can do that, you will build more trust, more loyalty, and more understanding. And when you have those pillars, you get performance. And that goes back to, why are your people not leaving and going and starting their own business? Because they have that.
Now, that is super deep.
Yeah.
It's a lot to unpack there as well. What are 1 or 2 things they can do intentionally to make sure they can do that, at least to the best of their abilities?
Care. You truly have to be. The greatest leaders on earth really care.
Yeah.
I think. Right? Think about it. Who are the greatest? Name a great leader. Mother Teresa, Dr. Martin Luther King. Like, there's 2 that just come to mind. Who cared more than them? Like, Dr. King got shot trying to do, like he put himself in a position like that. Who cared more than those 2 great leaders?
Yeah.
Right? And so I think it starts there. You really, really, really have to truly care. And then you have to listen, right? You have to listen. You have to pay attention. And I think you just have to keep it. It's really hard for me, and it was early on, and I had to learn humility, right? I walked into my office one day, and there was a sticky note that said humility before honor on my computer screen. And it was probably because I'd been a little bit of an ass the day before.
Yeah.
But I kept that sticky note. I still have it.
It's humbling.
I still have it.
Yeah.
It's a bookmark in one of my Napoleon Hill books. But humility before honor. So I think you got to care, you got to have empathy, and you got to listen to your people because they'll tell you exactly how to manage them. They'll tell you how to make them successful. They leave clues just like all the great titans of industry.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So before we get into the questions, and guys, please ask your questions. Before we get into the questions, we're going to share a quick announcement. So let's go ahead and roll it here. Hey, Steve Trang here. A lot of you have been asking me for sales management training. I didn't feel quite right teaching it, but I found the perfect guy to teach it for us. So Rhen, tell us about it.
Steve, we're going to be introducing some really intense fundamentals and philosophy behind the management of sales teams. Have a ton of experience building really high performance sales teams and really taking a little bit of this and a little bit of that, management practices and theories from all over the place and brought them together to create a unique whole person perspective that drives low performers to high performers and elite caliber salespeople into sales champions. And couldn't be more excited to partner with you on it and the Sales Disruptors brand.
For sure. So go to disruptors.com/success and we'll see you at the next event. Hey, Steve Trang here. A lot of you have been asking me for sales management training. So we got a few comments and questions already. Pretty cool. So on Instagram, W Music says, "To the most respected guys in space, no better operating the game than Rhen." So very nice compliment. On Facebook, we got Ryan Zolan. He's saying that I failed more bodies meant more production. Right? That's not an unusual concept. So it's cool. It's cool to see a situation where it succeeded. Sounds like he had much better structure than it did at the time. So, question from on Facebook from D McCall: what is an L10?
An L10 is the weekly leadership meeting. So it comes from EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. But it's the weekly leadership meeting, right? It's where you sit down, there's a strict agenda, it's good news, customer employee headlines, metrics, IDS, identify, discuss, solve, close out. And it's where your team comes together on a weekly basis and solves problems. They review the metrics, they look for, there's a bunch of different stoplight report, metronome, whatever. But it's the weekly meeting that moves the needle in short.
Yeah, I would say that it is the most impactful meeting we have in the week.
Yeah.
Right? Like sometimes we have our discovery meetings because we can't figure this out in 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the only way for the business to move forward is to intentionally resolve the issues that are getting in the way of us accomplishing our goals.
Yeah. And if it's not the most impactful meeting, you're doing it wrong. You have the wrong people or you're hiding from accountability.
Yeah. Another book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, right? The ability to have difficult conversations. I would say that one's a really good one. Another one too, right, is what was Larry Yach's title? Book.
How Leadership Actually Works.
Yeah, how leadership actually works, right? When everyone in your organization is free to challenge everyone else in the organization, it's a game changer.
It is. It very much is. But it starts with the basic principles that 5 dysfunctions of a team. You have to have trust. If you and I are working together and I don't trust you, I'm not going to challenge you, right? For whatever reason. Exactly. I may be scared that you're going to fire me or that you're going to excommunicate me or you're going to go talk trash behind my back. But if I trust you, I will then put us in a position to have a constructive conversation for the betterment of the organization.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely. Tim Serpy on YouTube wants to know, what were the struggles growing and expanding into new markets?
Yeah, all of them. We robbed from Peter to pay Paul early on.
I've had that experience.
Yeah. So, taking resources from one office to another, that was a struggle. Remote management can be tough, right? When you have offices all over the country, on a cost structure, sometimes it's tough to afford to put leadership, a real leader, in those offices. And so that can be tough. Maintaining the culture, and just the blocking and tackling of the business, understanding the market. Hey, this house, we can pay for it over here, and over here we can't, right? And construction costs vary greatly from state to state, right? Where
labor
in
costs,
Phoenix,
material costs.
you might be able to renovate a 2,500 square foot house, full cosmetic for 40 grand, but up in Flagstaff, it may cost you 65. That impacts your numbers, right?
Right.
So you have to know that. And then there's some state to state regulation around title work and stuff like that. But the biggest challenges, I think, in scaling a sales organization is understanding that you got to have the right people, and you got to hire quick, and you got to train quick, and you have to give them the resources that they need to be successful, and then get the heck out of their way.
Yeah.
Larry says you micromanage an underperforming team, and you don't manage a performing team.
Yeah.
Let them manage themselves. High functioning individuals have self-management, self-regulation, I believe is what he calls it, right?
Exactly.
So,
So you said something in there about having leaders in each location.
mhm.
That's something you guys did. That's something you guys struggled with. What does that mean?
I mean, we definitely struggled with it when we started, growing outward. But no, we tried to manage remotely,
Mhm.
right? And it works. You gotta move around. You gotta stay present. You gotta stay relevant, right? We're moving towards a more remote world, and that's a piece of the puzzle that folks got to really figure out. How do I manage someone when they're not sitting next to me every day?
Yeah. Other thing too, right? I mean, people want you to be present, and how are you present in a Zoom meeting?
Yeah,
That's like for me. I've had so many people like Steve. You're doing this, this, and this. Why don't you expand? Why don't you have multiple offices? I'm talking about just in Phoenix, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm in Tempe. Why don't you have a location in Peoria? Why don't you have a location in downtown Phoenix? Why don't you have a location here and there? And I said, like, I don't believe I'm a leader qualified to have my culture built
yeah.
into each one of these offices. Like, the main hub will have the culture to the best of my ability,
Hmm.
but the culture, I don't believe, this could be a limiting belief, I don't believe all the other tertiary offices, secondary offices, can have the same level of culture and accountability and leadership as the main hub.
For you specifically.
For me as a leader.
Yeah, yeah. Because I disagree with that as a broad statement. You got to have brand champions,
Hmm.
and how well you build those brand champions is how well your culture will expand,
Yeah.
right? How it'll be in other offices, I know other organizations and other businesses that are common to most people. I know, going back to Chick-fil-A, for example, I keep using them, but I know some Chick-fil-A locations that are exceptionally well ran from a
Mhm.
cultural standpoint, and some that are poor, right? Um, I think too that the better aligned the employees are with your mission, and the more that they understand it, and the more that they're bought into it,
Mhm.
that the more that's what strengthens the culture.
Yeah. Well, I think a key word there you said was understand, right? Like, that's
Mhm.
the one thing I learned. Not one thing, but one of the biggest things I learned from Larry Atch was that everyone has to understand the why,
Mhm.
right? This is not what we do. It's not how we do it. Those are important too.
Yeah. This is why
But
we do it.
why do we do this?
This is why we do it.
And now everyone's aligned.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, look, there's everything that you could think go wrong with expanding. It goes wrong, but I think the better question is, what did you do right? And we were relentless, and we moved quick.
Yeah.
When we found a deficit, when we found something that wasn't working, we figured out how to fix it.
So CC Wood here asked what's the name of the book. So we've mentioned a lot of books here, so I'm just gonna rattle them off. There was Traction, Multipliers, Sales Acceleration Formula, Sales Boss, Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. What other books have we talked about here?
I think that covers it. Multipliers. Did we say multipliers?
Multipliers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you did. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So hopefully, CC, that answers your question. And then Ivan Hernandez on YouTube got the chance to work with Rhen, and the culture that was built in the company is next to none. That's awesome. Fantastic.
Thank you,
compliment.
Ivan.
So Rye on YouTube, how come you guys didn't go nationwide?
You know, I think that was always the dream and the vision, right? And I'm not with the company any longer, and I don't know what their future plans are. But the goal was always to be as big as we could be. You
Mhm.
know, it takes time. There's a saying that a lot of people overestimate what they can do in 2 years and underestimate what they can do in 10. And, even one of my biggest take you and I spoke about our takeaways, and I left, I think, the most important one out, and it's listening, sitting and listening to all the people in Collective Genius. And there's people that are been in the real estate game 1 year, and there's OGs that have been in the real estate game 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
And, it's sustainable. It's hanging in there. It's being consistent, right? Was a big takeaway for me that I left out in our conversation earlier. It's like, but can you survive through the good times and the down times, right? And so, I think that you can accomplish anything. If a company wants to go nationwide, they can and they will. But you got to live through rough market conditions like this to be able to do it.
Yep.
And once you do, you'll learn, you'll get better, you'll adapt, you'll innovate. And then as long as you hang in there, there's no reason that any company can't go national if that's their aspirations.
Yeah. So I learned from a mentor recently. It was Nick Peterson. He talks about, making sure you always survive no matter what, right? Good times, bad times. Got to make sure you survive no matter what. You have to make sure you don't get blown up.
Yeah.
Because you can just completely throw away what you worked all these years to accomplish. And we saw it even in the last few months. I mean, I personally know people that have lost 7 figures, right? And since June, right? Since the Fed rate hike. Actually, I was talking to a buddy last week, and he said that he personally was on a phone with someone in our market who, for the month of August, logged a negative $800,000 a month. That's a tough pill.
Tough pill to swallow, Steve.
Yeah. I mean, I know I could never survive an $800K a month. I don't think I'd be married still if I had a negative $800K a month.
Yeah, yeah. Man, look, I think one of the things that makes us all great is we're super resilient, right? Wholesalers, people in real estate, they're resilient. There was a gentleman at this past meeting say he's been bankrupt 3 times. And the dude is extremely well off today.
Yeah.
And I thought about that, right? And what did they talk about at the event? Paranoia.
Productive paranoia.
Productive paranoia. And I asked him, were you always productively paranoid? And he said, no, but I am today.
Yeah.
And I may have been bankrupt 3 times, but I'll never be bankrupt again.
Yeah. I remember not this event, but an event prior, I want to say maybe 1 or 2 CGs ago, was Mike Watson talking about.
Yeah. What a vulnerable, great, amazing presentation.
Talking about how he got destroyed in the last recession.
Yep.
He did everything right. He did everything by the book. And he bought
crushed.
with equity. And he still got destroyed because of some litigious people that sued him out of existence.
Wow.
Right? So it doesn't matter even if you do everything right.
And look at him today. He is
now.
the most successful multifamily developer that I personally know on a first name basis. And he got crushed, right?
Got demolished. I mean, he got he mentioned, right? He was suicidal for a bit.
So, that resiliency, right? The ability to just hang in there, the consistency through the ups and downs.
So I'm just saying all these things right because you talk about why not go nationwide, and those are the kind of things that go through my mind. How many chips do I want to put out there? How much risk do I want to take?
Yeah, and nationwide, I think you got to figure out as a business owner, like what makes sense for you. Does what and hey, I want to go nationwide. It sounds cool, but what does that actually look like on a day-to-day basis? Right? Are you flying around all over the nation, visiting offices away from your family with your daughter on FaceTime saying, Daddy, when are you coming home? I've been there, and I enjoyed every second of it, but I don't know that today that's what I want to do anymore forever. Right. There was a time when that was the life that I envisioned, right? But I really envisioned being and raising my daughter.
Yeah. So the follow-up question from Rye was, how did you pick your markets?
So I'll answer that a different way. It's how would I pick my markets today? How about that? Because I think that we made some mistakes there. How I would pick a market today is I want to chase larger profit per deal. I want the widget, which would be the wholesale fee, to be as big as possible. And you do that by chasing median house price. I think that On average, your wholesale fee is going to trail about 10% of median house price, right? So, doing some work in Atlanta now, and the average house price is about $330,000, and you'll see average wholesale fees of about 30 grand, right? If you're, in a market where the median house price is 150, you're going to see $13,000 to $15,000 wholesale fees. So I think the better question is how would I today rather than how did I? And today I would go and I would look for a good, affordable median house price because I can account for my wholesale fee being about 10% of that. And the larger the wholesale fee, the better your margins, the more money you'll make.
Yep. And Elado has an interesting question. What is an acceptable gross profit margin for a wholesaling business?
That is a very good question. And it's also a tough one. It's going to be what is acceptable to you as the business owner, right? You may draw a line in the sand and say, hey, I'm not going to make any less than 40%. Well, you're going to sacrifice growth because you can only grow so fast at a 40% margin. But if you say, hey, I'm willing to build equity over cash in my company, and I'm okay for the next 3 months making no money because I know that I'm going to get an ROI off of that cash flow investment, then I think it comes down to the business owner and their goals, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a margin of safety. For example, if you're operating at 20% margins and the market shifts 20% and all of a sudden you're doing 20% less in business, do your margins go to zero? And are you in a cash position to survive? Just like we were saying earlier, so you have to think about those things. Like, what's your current cash position? What are you willing to sacrifice? How much is your overhead? Right? It's a very important question. And, what's your risk tolerance?
Yeah. And I think those are all absolutely key questions. So right now, with everything you got going on, what is your motivation? What is your why?
My why is to, I haven't always made the best decisions in life, right? Historically. And my why is to be the best person that I can be, right? A man of integrity, a man that helps others as much as I possibly can so that, when I'm on my last bed, right, I have no regrets. I don't want to regret sacrificing time with my family or being a husband. I don't want to sacrifice being a bad father or a bad husband for financial gain, right? Because you can't take it with you. And so, but I have a big heart for giving, right? And so I want to have a balanced work business life. I want to continue to give and help others and share the little bit that I have to share and try to help people. Like you have a goal to make 100 millionaires. I haven't quantified mine that exact, but I just want to give all I can give, and be happy doing it and live a life by design, do what I want to do when I want to do it with the people that I want to do it with.
Of course. And I think when we were talking over lunch, right? BJ kind of shared, what the lessons he learned from his dad's,
that hit home.
I don't know, celebration of life, what you want to call it. But you want to share with that real quick?
Yeah, there was a gentleman that won the belt. He got up and presented about how well their business was doing before this little correction, and then everything that he had went through leading up to this week, and then Friday his father passed, and they were wherever, probably at the family house, remembering and talking about his dad. And he said his dad was a super successful, some type of medical professional, medical practitioner, some type of doctor, built a big firm, highly successful, helped tons and tons of people, made a ton of money, had a ton of properties. And he said on his drive home, he realized not one time did anybody bring up anything related to business.
Yeah.
They talked about how good of a servant to the church, how his charity contributions, how great of a husband, a father, a brother, a friend. But not once did they say, man, he run one hell of a practice. That dude was a business tycoon. Not once was it brought up,
Yeah.
And so that punched me in the gut a little bit, and it kind of helped bring into alignment, like, what is my why, right? And I really believe it's the service of others.
There's talk about like it's like the 7 regrets and 9 regrets.
Hmm.
Like this lady went to all the hospices and like surveyed people, and no one ever says I wish I worked more.
Yeah.
No one ever says I wish I worked a few more hours. I spent more time away from my family. Right.
And it's tough, when you're building a business to remember that,
It is. It's very tough.
right? It's super tough. And I think there's a season, Jason Medley, when I first come into Collective Genius, somehow we were talking and work-life balance got brought up. And I said, I never see a time where I would ever work less than 80 hours a week. And you know how Jason's got that swag. He was like, young buck, let me tell you,
Yeah.
right? One day it won't be that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it was probably in the last year that I remember that conversation. I remember thinking, you know what? I really don't want to work 80 hours
Yeah.
anymore. And so, you go through those seasons in life, I think.
What is your biggest struggle right now?
Life is good. I don't really have any struggles. I have a lot of great friends, a lot of great mentors, a lot of great business partners in my life. If I had to come up with a struggle, I think it would probably be slowing down and being where my feet are, right? Especially when I'm with my family.
Mm-hmm.
It's many times it's hard for me. My wife asks me all the time, "What are you thinking about?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "That look on your face, like you're thinking about something." And I most of the time don't even remember what I was thinking about, but obviously I was deep in thought. And I think my biggest struggle is being where my feet are when I'm with my family and turning off that business brain because it's constantly searching for efficiencies and improvements and ways to make things better. I'm not a brand new big idea guy, but I'm an innovative idea guy. Like, how can I innovate this idea to make what I'm currently doing better and more efficient and make more money and help more people? And so I think it would just have to be turning that off
Yeah.
when it needs to be turned off is a struggle.
What are you doing about that?
Nothing currently. I need to do something.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, we all struggle with it,
Yeah. So,
especially as we've not what's the word? We've injected additional ADHD into our bodies, right? Like between the cell phones and everything else. Like when my kids will complain so much, like, "Dad, I'm bored," and my answer to them always is, "Good." Like, you need this skill.
Yeah.
You need this ability to sit there and do nothing, because if not, you're gonna be addicted.
Yeah, it's very true. So, but no, you bring up a good point. What am I doing about it? I need to do something about it. So.
Yeah, just doing some things we learned this week, right? Like,
Yep.
what are you worried about? And what are you doing about it?
Mm-hmm.
How
Yeah.
do you stay motivated? Which might be a silly question for you, but how do you stay motivated?
I'm pretty good at. I think the most important conversation you have is the one you have with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm pretty good at self-talk. There's a great diagram, right? That it shows motivation and it shows peaks and valleys. Motivation peaks and then it goes down and it peaks and it goes down. But then it has this straight line going all the way up, and that line's discipline, right? And so I don't know that I stay extremely motivated, but I stay extremely disciplined.
Yeah.
I'm very regimented, especially when I'm not traveling on the road. I do the same thing at the same time every day for the most part. And it's those disciplines that make sure that I'm intentional about getting done the work that I need to get done, right? I have a lot of coaching students and I tell them it's IPE, itemize, prioritize, execute. Itemize, prioritize, execute. And if you can be disciplined in the execution of your prioritization, you're gonna accomplish your goals.
Are you a little competitive?
What am I? You blocked my shot. What I say? Steve took me threw me into the wall the other day. I was pretty upset. I wasn't happy about it, was I?
You were not, and you came back harder on defense. But I'm asking this question because like, we're all pretty competitive,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the challenges we have being competitive is like, he did what?
Yeah.
Right now we
Yeah.
have to beat those numbers. So like, do you find yourself fighting against that?
I used to be really big onto that, right? but my competition is with myself these days. I think I'm in a race to be better than I was yesterday. I'm really big into that, and I'm competitive with myself. And I'll tell you, man, you look at people doing big numbers, and a lot of times it's not what it appears to be. And you look at people that have built big empires and that you think you admire, right?
Hmm.
Just like titans of industry, you can go and study them, and they're completely miserable,
Yeah.
right? There's a story about a fisherman and a guy on a beach, and the guy goes up to the fisherman and says, "Hey, you're just fishing with one pole, right?" No, that's not the story. The guy's laying on the beach and he's just kind of fishing with one rod. He says, What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm fishing." The guy's like, "Well, you should buy more poles and get a boat." And the guy's like, "Why?" And he's like, "So you can catch more fish." And he's like, "Why?" And he's like, "So you can buy a whole fleet of boats." And the guy's like, "Why?" And he's like, "So you can make a bunch of money and retire and lay on the beach." And the guy looks around and he's like, "But I am laying on the beach."
Right.
Right? And so I think that you gotta just understand what you want out of life, and comparison is the thief of joy, right? That you've heard that before,
Hmm.
and just I like I said, I used to want to outdo everybody else, but I just want to outdo the man that I was yesterday.
Yeah. Takes a lot of growth to get to that point.
Yeah.
So this might be a trick question for you. How do you measure success?
Um, Daily optimized experience.
All right, Larry would be proud. I was gonna send him this clip if you screwed up this question.
Sustainable over time.
Yeah. So in case you guys don't know what we're talking about, it might sound like an inside joke. Ren and I both have the same leadership coach, and he would probably. I mean, he's a Navy SEAL, and he'll probably end us at night.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
got that one wrong.
Mm-hmm.
What is your superpower?
That's a great question, and I got your form, and I was supposed to respond to this. I don't know if I did. Did I?
I don't recall.
I don't think I did. I think it's I think I have a few things that I'm really good at, but if I had to say one thing, I think it's self awareness. I'm pretty good at knowing when I'm an ass, and then going back and fixing it. We all make mistakes in life, and we all fall short. But it's understanding and admitting it, "Man, I'm wrong,"
Hmm.
and then let me go work to be better than I was yesterday.
Yeah.
So I think it's self-awareness and just, I would like to say humility, but I know that's not always true, but
Maybe not always be true, but I mean, I can tell that you care
yeah.
and you want to be better,
Yeah, for sure.
right? And I think that's a big part of humility
Mhm.
because once you don't think you can get better, that's when
Oh, boy.
you're gonna get
You're in
taught a
trouble
lesson.
then.
Yeah. What's the greatest lesson you have learned?
Um, I think that, the greatest lesson is you're gonna have setbacks in life, right? Everybody will. And it's the man that you become through that adversity. Does it do you become better? Do you remain the same, or do you become jaded and carry a victim mentality,
Mm-hmm.
right? Everything in life happens for a reason, and it's where we end up is how we adjust and overcome to the seasons in life that do happen,
Yeah.
right? And so I think knowing that it's just and it's not about the end, right? Talking about the stuff with BJ and his dad, it's the journey and who we become there, and staying self aware in that and realizing that, and like I said, just trying to get better every day.
Um, that part about the are you taking the lessons and are you becoming jaded or this or that? Because I can say there are a lot of elements in myself where I've become jaded right during 15 years. Like there are certain things like should I respond this way? Should I react this
Yeah,
way? But I do.
yeah.
Um, what is your favorite, best, or most interesting failure?
Favorite, best, or most interesting failure. Um, that's a great man. You're asking some deep questions here. Probably, it would have to be around my daughter or my wife. Um, it's really easy to show up a certain way at work, right? and it becomes increasingly difficult over time to continue to show up the way you want to show up at home. And I think that through building this business that I had spent the last 4 years of my life building, I really started to realize that I wasn't showing up the way I should at home. You know, you work all day, you grind all day, you get home and you're just exhausted, leave me alone, right? And so I wouldn't say favorite or interesting. I would say the most impactful is me realizing that, hey, I'm not showing up the way that I need to show up at home, and being self-aware, like we spoke about, and trying to, and I still struggle with it, right? There's many times that, my daughter will run up to me and want to play and want to play a board game or something, or my wife will want to go on a date, and I'm just like, man, you know, and so I think that I try to get better every day with that. So I don't know. Does that
That's
answer
huge,
your
though.
question?
It absolutely does. And it's huge because we know going to the office, we got to be prepared for the office.
That's the easy part. Going to the office. It's coming home and showing
Right.
up.
So
This the
instead of
hard
looking
part.
at it like I'm leaving work,
Yeah.
think about it maybe where like I'm coming home
Mm-hmm.
and to be prepared
Yeah.
for coming home.
Yep. It's the
Complete-
after party.
Yeah, it's a completely different thought. That's also really deep as well. Final question for me. There's one more question from the audience, but final question for me is: what book have you gifted more than any other?
The Manly Art of Raising a Daughter. Every guy that I here has a daughter, I give it to him. I send it to him.
I don't have that book.
Well, I'll send it to you as well.
I'm just putting that out
You
there.
haven't had a daughter in the past 3 years that we've become friends either.
Putting out it
So
into the
I'll
universe.
send it to you. I will. It really impacted me.
Yeah.
I had Emmy. She come to live with me when she was about 1 year old. I was single. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, and I was
Yeah.
scared. And like anything, when I feel uneducated, I begin to read, and that book really was impactful for me. So
That's
I've
awesome.
given it a lot. I've given that, and I've given The Law of Success a lot, and another one that I give all the time is How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Have you read Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters?
Mm-mm.
That's one I liked a lot.
Really?
Yeah, I was talking to Ryan Weimer a couple days ago. Right, he
Yeah.
just had a daughter, and he's like, "What do you recommend?" I was like, "Start with that."
Yeah. Okay. What was the name of it?
Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters.
Okay.
Talks about the importance, right? Because you've heard there's that old cliche of like daddy issues and this and that, right?
Oh yeah.
Don't be the dad that causes those issues, and he kind of talks
Yeah.
about
No joke.
the do's and don'ts. Question from the audience here. So they're asking, Greater David, are we at Real now? Yes, I am at Real. So if you guys are interested, if you guys are licensed, join us at Real. Happy to have you join us, David. So I want you to think about the last thoughts you want to leave all the listeners with while I make a few quick announcements. Guys, if you got value today, please like, subscribe, share, comment. I'm being completely transparent here. We want to manipulate the algorithms. So if the more you guys interact, the more people we reach, the more millionaires we can create. And then we do have Power in the Disruption. We had that earlier today, so check that out every week. And we got Certainty Talks every Friday, except for tomorrow, because I'm going to be in Denver with Paul Sparks for our live event. And then we do have coming up next Wednesday, John Burley, a very fascinating life story. I got to talk to him, and he was on the circuit back in the day with Jim Rohn and Zig Ziglar. Can you imagine
No, I cannot.
like what your life would be if you got to just spend all your time with those guys?
Yeah, that'd be
So,
cool.
What are some last thoughts you'd like to leave all the listeners with?
Yeah, fine. Well, I'm thankful to be on the podcast today. Thankful to be able to share my story. I've not really shared it much.
Yeah.
I've had my head down grinding for the past close to 5 years. So excited to be able to do that. But, if I could give the listeners, the viewers, anything, it's just like I said, man, try to be self-aware, stay humble, be 1% better than you were yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. And if someone wants to get a hold of you,
At Rhen Bartlett.
at Rhen Bartlett. Really? That simple?
That's simple.
Man, I was trying to get Steve Trang. That didn't work. So, awesome. Thanks so much.
Oh, yep.
And I'm looking forward to our partnership. If you guys
yes.
haven't checked it out, be sure go check it out. Disruptors.com/sales management training, or I don't know. They'll pop that up on the website or on the screen. So thank you guys, and we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.